Thank you very much for the opportunity to appear before you this evening. I'd like to address my remarks toward the city's search for the next CAO, but before I do, I'd like to thank Ms. Thompson very, very much for her service to this community. My first and perhaps only point is that this position needs to be filled with great care and not in a rush, and quite possibly with outside professional assistance. As this is not my particular area of expertise, I'm going to rely heavily upon the many words of a Mr. David Siegel, who was the Dean of Faculty of Education and Professor of Political Science at Brock University, and he was the author of Leaders in the Shadows, the Leadership Qualities of Municipal Chief Administrative Officers. In a 2015 paper for the publication for the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario, he sets out the following, and I'll quote, "The Chief Administrative Officer plays a major role in the success of a municipality. He or she sits at the intersection of the council and administration. The CAO must also take the concerns of staff to council, which does not always want to hear staff's cautions and concerns. As I wrote in Leaders in the Shadows," he continues, "my recent book on chief administrative officers, CAOs can make a mayor and council look exceptionally good or bad. They can be a source of great pride and motivation among the staff of the municipality or not. They can be an important conduit in the two-way flow of information between community organizations and the municipality or not. A tremendous amount hinges on how well a CAO carries out her or his responsibilities," unquote. To me, this sounds similar to a conductor of an orchestra helping the various sections move in concert towards a harmonious end. Without such a person, those sections may head off too fast, too slow, or in the wrong direction. Mr. Siegel goes on to state that his main purpose in writing Leaders in the Shadows was to identify the traits, skills, and behaviors exhibited by CAOs who were successful leaders. His approach was to present case studies of 5 CAOs who had been recognized as successful leaders. As a byproduct of that research, he developed a good understanding of how successful CAOs viewed their position and what they actually did. To develop this understanding, he relied on the CAOs themselves and those around them, councillors, staff, and community members. He did not put much reliance on written job descriptions, which tended to be sterile restatements of a standard list of duties without much life about how those duties are actually carried out in practice. And I will quote him again when he says, "An important caveat in considering the role of the CAO is that every organization is a bit different, but there is a significant difference in the role of the CAO in small versus large municipalities. In broad strokes, the roles are similar regardless of the size of municipality, the style and day-to-day activities vary," unquote. Before considering what CAOs do, Mr. Siegel clears up any misconceptions by discussing some things that CAOs do not do. Firstly, he relays that they do not directly manage operations. The CAOs he spoke with took pride in the role as the senior leader of the municipal organization, but they also lamented that they were somewhat removed from the direct delivery of services. He gave the example of one CAO who had been an engineer and likened his role to being the head of a holding company with several subsidiary corporations. Nominally, he was in charge of the entire organization, but in practice, he did not have the time or expertise to delve too deeply into the operation of any of the subsidiaries. He urged that anyone aspiring to become a CAO or senior manager needs to reflect on this. Being responsible for everything that happens in the municipality at a high level means being cut off from the direct involvement in many day-to-day service delivery issues. In speaking to their use of authority, he says, quote, "The person who resides at the top of the organization possesses a great deal of institutional power. Of course, there are some constraints in provincial legislation, council policies, and collective agreements, but these still leave the CAO with a significant amount of authority to command and control people further down the organizational chart. The CAOs I spoke to, he goes on, to claim that they used this blunt authority quite sparingly. Most CAOs preferred to rely on influence rather than authority to accomplish their goals. A CAO once told one of my classes that he felt that if he had to resort to authority to get something done, then he'd failed in some way. If what he wanted to do done was such a good idea, then surely those around him would want to do it without being subjected to the force of authority. The concept of team building is that if you have confidence in the team that you have built around you, and if the members of that team are uncomfortable with something that you want to do, then you need to think carefully about imposing your authority on them. So what do CAOs do? Well, CAOs do not do much direct operational management, and they do not use their authority very much. Then what exactly do they contribute to the organization? The answer is that they contribute a great deal, but much of it is in an indirect and intangible way. The CAO sets the tone for the organization and has a major role in creating the organizational culture. CAOs can do things like infuse professionalism in the organization or convert an organization from a top-down command and control system to a more empowered organization. CAOs can have a great impact because of their mere presence and the subtle signals they send. One senior manager said that he had never had to learn about ethical conduct in an academical sense because of a strong sense of ethical conduct was always in the air around her. Many CAOs probably underestimate the power that they possess by influencing their organization through simple modeling appropriate behavior. When one CAO treated everyone in the organization, from department heads to janitors, in the same respectful manner, he was sending a powerful signal about the value he attached to every person in the organization. And he goes on to say, as mentioned previously, CAOs do not do much hands-on management, but an important part of their job is to assemble a good team around them. Having assembled the team, the CAO then lets these competent people do what they do best, manage their functional areas, unquote. And Mr. Cassillo continues to say that hiring the right person is very important, but that is only the beginning. The CAO must build a team ethos and retain those good team members. The team ethos begins by infusing the organization with the idea that the interest of the municipality is more important than the interests of any individual department. This can involve banning what one CAO called turf talk at management meetings. It can also involve the use of interdepartmental task forces with real decision-making authority to break down the sense of silo management. And the real idea of a team is that the team is composed of competent and committed members, but the team must function as a unit and act in the broad interest of the municipality and not in the interest of any individual unit. He says vision is a problematic concept for a municipal CAO, or any public sector manager for that matter. The picture painted in the private sector's literature is a relatively hands-off board of directors that hires a CEO who has a vision of where he or she wants to take the organization. Then the board checks in once in a while to see how things are going. Visioning is more complex in municipal government, he says, because visioning is clearly the role of the council. Some councils do it better than others, but most want to retain a hands-on approach to establish the vision of the municipality. The CAO must respect this role of council, but CAOs can have a role in creating a vision. The CAO should not be totally passive. The engaged CAO can be active in a number of ways. The active CAO could bring problems to the attention of council, even when council would rather not hear about them. Or the role of the CAO could involve guiding councillors into uncharted waters where they feel uncomfortable. CAOs should also have a vision of how they want to guide the administrative operation. Several CAOs in the book inherited problematic situations between council and staff. In this situation, the CAO must work with the mayor and council to solve these problems. The CEO should have a vision of the optimum role of staff. I'm getting to the end. He goes on to mention that although CAOs do not directly manage services, they have an important role in monitoring performance to ensure that the organization is functioning as it should. But CAOs need to be careful about not getting mired in micromanagement. And finally, Mr. Siegel is keen to point out that while CAOs made it a point not to manage most aspects of service delivery, there were some functions that they deliberately kept close to them. It is frequently suggested that the two most important resources that any organization has are people and money. The CEOs he covered in his book made a point of retaining a significant involvement in the management of these two resources. He concludes with the following, and I quote, "The CEO plays an important part in the efficient operation of the municipality. The CAO provides expert professional advice to council and ensures the proper implementation of council decisions. He or she is the link between the council and staff. CAOs have job descriptions as well as provincial legislation and sometimes employment contracts that set out their duties. However, these legal documents do not always capture the essence of what a good CAO actually does. The good CAO engages in a balancing act that is more art than science. He needs to monitor the activities of his organization but not micromanage. She needs to guide council in making good decisions, but cannot be too directed with council. It can be a difficult route to navigate, but examining how successful CEOs have done, this can assist people who aspire to the role in developing their own abilities and approach." So for my part, I recently spoke with Ian McCormick, who conducted the good governance sessions here a few years back, and I inquired as to what the qualifications might be for a CEO. Interestingly, he said there were none that were mandatory. However, from his point of view and experience, better ones come from having worked in a range of smaller municipalities in order to gather up exposure and relevant experience, and preferably coming with a combination of post-secondary education, leadership skills, often including a graduate degree or equivalent, and extensive experience in senior management roles. I think it could be considered an understatement to say that the world has now become a faster and more complex place. In municipal settings, I would think it more essential than ever to have a qualified and individual as possible to enhance the chances of initiatives and policies being steered in a robust and positive direction while diminishing the chances of citizen concerns and even chaos which can come when the conductor has lost the script. In conclusion, my personal opinion is that this may be the most important file and decision in front of this council right now and in the long term. To get this position right is essential. Perhaps other things can be temporarily set aside until the position is properly filled, and which no doubt will benefit from having the right person in place. To this end, I would also strongly recommend that the city moves to secure outside professional assistance in this endeavor. There is no question the future of the city and the efficacy of its operations may well depend upon it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKennitt.